It is time to continue my reviews of the Netflix adaptation of Avatar The Last Airbender, and of course today we continue with episode 2. We are going to break it down and talk about it, and of course you'll be warned we are going to be talking about spoilers. My fellow benders of all four nations, welcome to Uncle Iroh's tea shop, the Jasmine Dragon. Find yourself a seat, grab some jasmine tea, and enjoy the video. Like with my recent videos, let's see if we can hit a goal of 300 likes on this one. So to start, I'll give my thoughts. I actually thought that this episode was a step down very much from the first episode when I first watched it, but when thinking on it again more, I think it was just okay, but again, it still is a step down. There's some stuff in it that I liked and some stuff in it that I was not a big fan of. This episode is centered around the Kyoshi arc from the cartoon with a sprinkle of other stuff from other episodes. For example, they bring in the Waterbending Scroll, we get introduced to Commander Zhao, and an introduction to Avatar Kyoshi, even though she technically shows up in Book 2 in person form, and then also the first reveal of Ozai at the very end. I do love how the episode starts with Zuko having a temper tantrum in his room, trying to find his journal, and Iroh just plays it off with a joke in the most Iroh way possible. He's trying to look for his journal, of which Aang stole in the first episode, which details so much of what Zuko has been studying, and subsequently that transitions into the next scene where Aang tells the group that he wants to go to Kyoshi Island using his journal next to connect with Avatar Kyoshi. We also get our first reveal of Momo, which makes sense given this is where they found him, and I have to say, even though Momo does not show up a whole lot in the season, I do think that they nailed down the look of his character as well and how he acts, although they do something with him in the finale that I kind of was not that big of a fan of, but we'll get to that when we eventually talk about the finale. This is also where we get the reveal that apparently they have changed up how Katara gets the Waterbending Scroll. Instead of getting it from the pirates, it was actually stored away by Gran in safekeeping in the Southern Water Tribe. Now, in hindsight, I could honestly take either or for how they do this, especially if they weren't going to adapt the pirates in the first place anyway, which they don't do this year, so it doesn't really turn me off that much. We also get Aang burying Gyatso's body, and I actually like that they touched up upon this because he didn't do that in the cartoon, and that is a good amount of respect that he also deserves because he, above all people, should be buried for the sacrifice he made to protect his nation and people, and he also just is a really good person. When the gang eventually arrives to Kyoshi Island, they go to the statue of Kyoshi first like they do in the cartoon, and this is when we get the reveal of the Kyoshi warriors led by Suki, and this reveal I think was a little poorly directed and edited, just how they were able to sneak up on them, although they do sneak up on them in the cartoon, and again, this here in live action I thought was a little weird how they tried to do it. The statue itself beams a light down on Aang, which reveals to them that he has the connection to Kyoshi, and so they take them back to the village after. When they get taken back, they get sat down by Yukari, who is the leader of the village and also a new character, but also the mother of Suki. In the original cartoon, it was never truly established that her mom was there or if she lost her or not, but here I think that is a new touch-up on the lore, especially for the background of that character. Yukari let them stay in the village, even though that they are meant to be more isolated and left alone, and so this is of course where we get the rest of the Kyoshi arc that we are used to seeing. This also begins where Sokka tries to be slick with it towards Suki, and he failed miserably on the first try in typical Sokka fashion, given he is really bad with talking to girls. Suki has an eye for him, although this tends to be something that pushed forward in a much quicker pace as we get into the later parts of the episode. Next up, we have the first reveal of Commander Zhao as Zuko and Iroh arrived in the port where we first meet him in the cartoon, although this time not to repair damages to his ship, but to look for intelligence on whether Aang and the gang would be around the area that they are in. I have to be honest, Zhao as a character is one that grows on me more with each episode, but the first time we get his appearance, I wasn't a big fan of it just because he is a character that is known to be very confident in himself with how he talks and what he does, and so I didn't feel that at first, but again, it grows on me over time. Now, this next sequence is the start of which might be my least favorite thing about the episode, which is, of course, the beginning of the eventual romance and relationship between Suki and Sokka. This first scene is so awkward, and honestly, I kind of wish that they either went without it or cut it down because man, does it go on for too long. Suki seeing him shirtless felt like forever, and this is only a continuance of some of the other scenes that they have with each other in the later part of the episode. I do feel like the relationship with each other in this episode moved a little too quickly than how they did it in the cartoon, where at first they do like each other, but not in the romance type of way yet. Their scenes to me feel like something out of a bad YA adaptation, or even just anything that would revolve around a romantic relationship. They just that really just moved too quickly quickly, and we've all seen our fair share of that in entertainment. So again, I wasn't really a fan of the scenes together with them, given how awkward they were with the dialogue and editing and how fast they moved. Katara is trying to learn waterbending from the scroll, and she and Aang have a playful scene together with each other to kind of build on their relationship, which I think is good because they do have a fun relationship with each other at first. I love the addition of the food scene where Sokka just loves his food, and it's a nice looking table of food. I will say, this kind of stuff is done very well in the show. Aang also gets to show off to the kids in the village doing his air scooter thing, but honestly, I wish there was an air marbles scene because that stuff is so funny, and we don't get the one guy in the cartoon who is frothing at the mouth, unfortunately. We get some more scenes of Zhao trying to learn about where Aang is and why Zuko arrived at the port, along with another scene very awkwardly between Sokka and Suki, but then we get to some of the nitty-gritty stuff that I really liked in the episode. Yukari lets them go inside of the statue to learn more about a lot of the knowledge and background behind Avatar Kyoshi, and inside of the scene is some cool stuff to really look at. I really liked the portrait of showing Avatar Kyoshi defeating Chin the Conqueror, which is really cool and a nice touch. Aang begins to question if he is right for this duty when learning about her, and I have to say, this is something that I feel gets touched up upon too much during the season, where he continues to question if he's right for the role of Avatar, because yes, he does do this in the cartoon, but he doesn't do it so much to where he's always questioning his responsibility and the power that he can bring with it. We get a training scene between Suki and Sokka, and again, it is a little awkward, but I like that they included the scene of him getting trained by her like they do in the cartoon. And again, now we get to another nitty-gritty scene, which is a change-up from the lore and the cartoon, where Aang goes into the Avatar state to speak with none other than Avatar Kyoshi herself. This is one of the change-ups of the rules of the Avatar state that the live-action adaptation is going with, where basically anytime Aang shows up to a statue of the Avatar from the past, he connects with them by talking with them and having a conversation. He does this in the original with Roku, but he doesn't do it with Kuruk and Kyoshi like he does in the live action. I do like the scene because it is an addition to the stuff behind the character of Kyoshi, who might be one of the coolest characters in all of Avatar lore, Avatar or not. Basically, she tries to give him advice on how to control his power, but also to be the Avatar himself. Again, I like the scenes, although I probably would have done without the blur effect that they use here that makes it look way too glossy, but that's just a nitpick. Both Zhao and Zuko arrive to Kyoshi village to get Aang, but in different paths, which is a change-up I don't mind. This is then where the action starts to ensue, and some of it looks pretty good, again, when you take into consideration that it is all in camera and you can see what is happening, and of course, it's not going to be as great as the cartoon is, given the cartoon just has a bigger flair to it in terms of the action, but I still think it was done well here as well. When we see that Aang is in trouble along with Katara, this is when Kyoshi herself shows up in the real world to fend off the Fire Nation. Zuko gets his ass kicked by her, and then when she shows up to the village itself, that is when the chaos ensues as she just rains down hell on everyone there. Again, I think the effects here look decent for what they are going for, and this is of course a change up from the cartoon because again, she never shows up, but I don't mind the addition. When it's over, she leaves and Aang comes out of her with the Fire Nation retreating away. Now this is where we get our farewell to the village, and Sokka gives his farewell to Suki, and I still think that this is a little rushed, although I will add one more thing to this. I do think that the actress who is playing Suki did an amazing job, and I would love to see her come back in the future as the character. Zuko, in a desperate effort, tries to offer to Zhao to not tell anyone that the Avatar has returned, and this is where the rift between them really starts to kick off, because they obviously hate each other in the cartoon, but I think this scene is ultimately how we come to get into the later portion of where the cartoon goes, where they actively just want to rip each other's throat out, which subsequently leads into the final scene of the episode as we see a messenger hawk heading towards the Fire Nation capital, which then leads right into the Fire Nation throne room, which gives us the first reveal of none other than Firelord Ozai himself receiving the message that the Avatar has returned. That right there, I think, was a great way to end off this second episode. Again, overall, I thought this episode was a step down from the first and probably actually one of my least favorite episodes, even though I still believe that if you put together both of the first two episodes into one, I do think that it is a good start to the show overall. So those are my final thoughts on episode 2 of the Netflix adaptation, and now we get to the most important part of the video, which is where I want you all to comment down below your thoughts on the episode and what you thought of my commentary on it. If you did enjoy this video, or if you enjoyed the episode itself, give the video a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new here, and turn on that notification bell for when I upload again in the future. On your way out of Uncle Iroh's tea shop, be sure to let him know how much you appreciate his jasmine tea and his words of wisdom that come with it. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day, and I will see you soon for more Avatar.